Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we look into what happens next in Gaza. Let's get started. For the last few weeks, we've had a couple of episodes on this peace deal. Before the peace deal, during the peace deal, and then the eventual acceptance of it, and now the aftermath of that peace deal. If you want a little bit more information, what I had said last week and the week before, I suggest you go back and listen to some of the details of these peace deals and my concerns, my issues that I had with them. Because, as seems to be the case, I know what's going to happen before it happens. So on this week's episode, you might find that I was right in previous episodes, yet again. But I do feel it's very important for my listeners to understand what's going on, and obviously things are a little bit fluid right now. Many things that I had predicted, and other things we don't really know yet. First and foremost, hopefully by the time you listen to this episode, the hostages, the living ones, are released, and healthy, relatively. We did get a little bit of information that suggested that Hamas was attempting to fatten up the hostages, so that way when they came out, they didn't look as bad as they definitely currently do. But unfortunately, that comes with risks. So Israel spoke to the Red Cross and tried to beg them to tell Hamas not to stuff their faces with food because they haven't eaten full meals in possibly 2 years. Feeding these hostages and overfeeding these hostages could actually lead to their deaths minutes before they actually get out of captivity. But of course, the Red Cross and definitely Hamas couldn't care less about the actual well-being. For them, it's all about being able to give photos to their trolls around the world saying, look how happy and healthy all of these people are. We treated them like kings and queens in here. Despite what will eventually come out from the testimony, that they talk about the starvation and the mistreatment. But who cares about that? Pro-pallies don't need actual facts. They'll find some reason to discredit this hostage as anything they say is all a bunch of propaganda. Leaving all of that aside, the thing that actually surprised me the most about this situation was the way that no one really even pretended that it was actually a genocide or a famine anymore. Once the war was called off, or a ceasefire, or whatever we're going to call this, I would understand why Hamas and the pro-pallies would say this is a win. They do that literally every time. It's hilarious when you see them post a picture of a destroyed area while also claiming a victory. But what was incredible was that days before this ceasefire took effect, the UNRWA, UNRWA, which we all know is a front for Hamas, had said that the famine was getting so bad in Gaza. Oh my goodness, we cannot deal with this famine. And then 2 days later, after the deal had been signed, and I'm not even joking and exaggerating here, they literally put out an announcement that they had 3 months worth of food in Gaza for everybody to eat. So within the matter of 24 hours, somehow they found, mysteriously, 3 months worth of food? Pretty incredible during a famine. The UN literally doesn't even try and hide their faking of posts anymore. The fact that they've been lying about famine for years, and now just openly go, oh, by the way, we just found 3 months worth of food. We're all good here. Don't worry. This is probably why on the last episode, we talked about how Hamas tried to change the deal with Israel to say, don't send us food. We don't need aid first. We want rebuilding materials first. We want to put a priority on rebuilding. Probably because they know that UNRWA, the unofficial arm of Hamas, had 3 months worth of food just sitting there waiting to be given out. So they don't really need the food. Kind of seems like I was right when I said in the last episode that all of that was a big lie. But another thing that I'm incredibly saddened by, the thing that I got right in a few of our episodes over the last little while, is the fact that Hamas, despite saying they've agreed to this deal, clearly has not agreed to all of this deal, because they have come out, their official spokesperson, and said, we will not disarm. That is sort of a fundamental part of this deal that they supposedly agreed to. On the last episode, we said that they probably would find a way to not actually disarm. And it's pretty clever what they did. Even I wouldn't have seen this specific thing coming, even though I called it out exactly as it's happening. First of all, like we've seen in every other ceasefire, the first thing that happens is Hamas comes out of their holes and they start oppressing their people. Because all of these people who stood up against them, protested, might even consider kicking them out. They need to put them in their place and make sure that everybody knows we didn't go anywhere. On an episode a long time ago, I had mentioned that as Israelis and Jews, we have to be careful about making a ceasefire with Hamas, because we know that they go and start to kill their own people. And it seems a little selfish to say, you know what, let's do a ceasefire. Who cares about the Gazans who are going to be shot and killed by Hamas the minute they come out of their tunnels? And that's a really tough thing to say and a tough thing to do. Accepting a ceasefire knowing that you're putting all of those people at risk. This is only further proof, in addition to their open statement saying they're not going to disarm, that they're intending to stay in power. This is why they're going out and murdering people, civilians, because they want to make sure that nobody gets the wrong idea. They are still firmly and entirely in control of Gaza. The thing that I never really saw coming, which is sort of smart, is that they decided instead of disarming, they're going to rebrand themselves. They are no longer Hamas because Hamas is banned in Gaza. They are now the Gazan Security Forces, so they're calling themselves now. It's all an attempt to simply just change the name on the door and pretend that they're gone while still maintaining power. And according to the BBC this week, they have said that Hamas is openly recruiting to refill all of the dead soldiers that they had lost. They are now seeking to get more people to join them in order to be a part of this new security force. Doesn't quite sound like a disarming and a getting rid of Hamas. Seems like they believe they're going to stay in power. And this is a big challenge to the international world who's just signed on to removing Hamas from Gaza. Now, the American president, among many other world leaders, are getting together this week to actually meet and talk about these issues. Hopefully, they're not stupid enough to not recognize what's happening here. Another big issue that we are seeing, starting pretty much since the ceasefire, is the fact that armed groups in Gaza are now able to fight against Hamas. At this moment, we have a civil war happening in Gaza. Not unlike the 2005 civil war, once Israel pulled out of Gaza, Fatah and Hamas had a civil war for who gets to control Gaza. Now we see Hamas is on its last leg. The world is saying they have to leave. They are down incredible amounts of people. So we see other groups showing up, vying for that top spot. Someone's going to have to lead. Someone's going to take over this Palestinian board that the world is going to create. Who's going to get that job? And I hate to say, we've seen this many times in Arab countries. If you think of Syria and Iraq, you have these power vacuums that happen when the ruthless dictator is overthrown or kicked out of power. And the people who get in usually go on a killing spree of killing all of their enemies. This is, I hate to say, par for the course in the Arab world. And so videos are showing up all over the internet of Hamas killing people for collaborating or going against them. And we hear the stories of Hamas members being killed by other groups. Most notably, the recent death of the Mr. Fafo, the very famous Gazan Instagram model who's died 15 or 16 times now. Not for real. Until this time. He was recently killed by an anti-Hamas group. So with all of this uncertainty, we really don't know what is going to happen on the ground. We need, essentially, a group to go in and calm this thing down. It was supposed to be the Arabs. Maybe this is a reason why Israel shouldn't have had to pull out. At least, not until someone can come and fill the vacuum before Hamas regains power. Or a civil war. But the key thing really is that in the last podcast episodes, I talked about how Hamas will hand over the living hostages, and they'll probably play games and say they're not going to give up their power. They might play around with the non-living hostages since they technically have more time for that. We'll release these ones. We can't find those ones. Mark my words, it's probably going to happen. They need to stay in power. So for now, they're just trying to stay internally in power to get rid of all of these groups that are vying for their position. Next, they're going to worry about trying to stay in power with the international world. Surely they're going to claim that they are the only people able and responsible enough to run it. They may not call themselves Hamas, they'll call themselves something else. But they're going to say, look, Mr. Mohammed over here, he's run the town for years under Hamas. He doesn't like Hamas anymore, but let him run the town anyway because he already has experience. and then he'll just keep running it like Hamas did. Obviously, there are some Arab countries that might be better than others, but let's be honest, democracy doesn't exactly work in Arab countries. Almost everyone is either a dictatorship or some type of weird theocracy. And when one leader gets taken out for whatever reason, there's a power vacuum, and everyone else wants in, because not a single one of them wants to actually bring democracy, equal rights, women's rights, gay rights. They simply want to be in power so they can steal the money, like the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have been doing. So whoever comes in next into Gaza has a literal license to steal. They will steal all of the aid that's going in, and they will be corrupt. They could try and actually help their people, but what good is that? What's the point in helping other people when you yourself can get rich and all of your friends can get rich? The saddest and most ironic part about all of this is the fact that meanwhile, everyone was crying about Israel killing civilians in Gaza, despite the fact that most of the time that actually wasn't true. But meanwhile now, Arabs are killing Arabs in Gaza, and no one can care less. Mr. Fafo, the guy that I mentioned earlier that was killed, was wearing a press vest when he was killed. He's not actually press, he just wears it to pretend. But meanwhile, I don't see one post online talking about how the Arabs took him out. Here's another journalist being killed. Nobody cares, because it wasn't at the hands of the Jews. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad how obvious this is, that when a journalist wearing a press vest is killed and they can blame it on Israel, it is on the cover of every newspaper. When that same kind of person is killed by an Arab, a fellow Gazan, no one even talks about it. It doesn't register at all, even on social media. The one bright side about all of this, God willing, is that we will get our hostages back, the living ones at least. So those people will come home. Israel is prepared to pick them up, bring them to the hospital, and get them well again. But also, something that has really been flying under the radar. We've talked on this podcast before about October 7th being the attempt by Hamas and Iran to stop the normalization deal between the Saudis and Israel. Everybody knew that was in the process and almost ready, which is why October 7th had to happen. And the Saudis and many others have essentially said, we can't make a deal with Israel while this war is going on. And we saw the Arab world come together in this most recent deal, the Trump plan, to pressure Hamas into giving up. And what's crazy is we actually had people like Turkey and Qatar and all of the other ones come together and agree that Hamas needs to be removed. So hopefully that's a good sign that they'll actually do that in hopes of making peace with Israel. Because in a report that we saw today, the story behind the scenes is that Israel is poised to make 5 or 6 brand new peace deals with Arab countries. According to a Likud member, that's the governing party in Israel right now, under Benjamin Netanyahu, they are saying that before the next election in Israel, they expect 5 or 6 peace deals with Arab countries. This is remarkable. The only ones that I could think of, obviously we have Lebanon and Syria who've already said that they'll probably make peace with Israel. We know the Saudis want to make peace, and that's probably going to go through. But then we also have people like Oman, maybe, and some other Arab nations that are all going to make peace with Israel. This is huge. Because in a leaked document that was just revealed this week, it turns out, despite the fact that the Arab world was claiming that they hated Israel for what they were doing in Gaza, they need to stop immediately, the reality was, behind the scenes, they were working closer with Israel than they ever had in the past. We saw little sparks of this when it came to trying to shoot down Iranian missiles, but apparently it goes way deeper than that. The ability for these countries to work together, despite not actually normalizing, has become way tighter between these countries. They are ready to normalize, officially, since they're sort of doing it unofficially. All they needed was for this conflict to end. And it doesn't hurt that the Trump plan provides this claim of a future statehood, possibly if things go well, which we know in the past when it comes to Egypt and Jordan has been the buyout to pretend like you care about the Palestinian state, but not really. So this gives the Arab states something to use as a claim of, look, we signed on to this deal, so we support the future Palestinian state, but we don't actually want to do anything about it before we make peace with Israel. It really is quite smart, the way they pulled the Jordanian and Egyptian move, pretending to care about a Palestinian state, pushing it off to the future, and then just making peace with Israel with no intention of actually making a Palestinian state. In the end, this past week has been a really big roller coaster, and we're not done yet. At the time of recording this podcast, we don't know if the hostages got out and if they're alive and well, and that will be something that we'll see this week. And we're also seeing the complete chaos that's happening in Gaza right now. You have a bunch of people who are killing one another. Of course, the media doesn't care as long as it's not Jews doing it. But nonetheless, we don't know who is going to take power. Is Hamas going to stay in power and regain control, which will make it much harder for them to be removed later? Or are these militias going to take them out and make it easier for Hamas to be removed? But then the question always remains, in an Arab country, who is the next person to come into power? We've seen this many times before, including in Syria right now. But the one bright thing that I could see from this week is the fact that the Arab world is aligned with Israel. We see tighter connections, we hear about possible peace deals, and let's hope and pray that this is a sign that these countries are serious about removing Hamas from Gaza and making Gaza a better place. As we've said on the podcast before, it's pretty amazing what could happen in Gaza with a non-Palestinian Arab government, one committed to peace and coexistence, and even some type of statehood. Imagine what happens when the Gazans get that lifestyle, and the people in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria who are living under the oppressive and horrible corrupt regime of the PA sees what the Gazans have. Maybe they're going to bring that government from Gaza over to them too, and they could have a better life. As always, only time can tell what's next for Gaza. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.